Welcome to the Backlash at Backlash.com. My name is Rod Van Mecklin, and in this video I'm going to read from my 1992 article, Boring Women. The full article is linked below. Quote, I find women boring because they only talk about hair, makeup, and men, close quote. One of the women quoted in Women and Love by Cher Hite, 1992, Bellevue, Washington. If it's not sexist to criticize men who only want one thing, then why is it sexist to criticize women who want men who only want one thing? Most men think most women are boring. Strip away the provocative clothing, wash off the war paint, rinse away the perfume, and often all that's left is a boring person. Is that sexist? Can truth be sexist? On the whole, women are as interesting and as intelligent as men. Note, yes, I'm aware that studies now show this is not true, but remember, I wrote this 23 years ago. Still, the following remains relevant and true. Continuing. Unfortunately, their mothers, teachers, and peers teach them to hide that from men. Ironically, this prevents them from ever being really interesting to men outside the context of sex. If women are dumb, then why should men be interested in them for anything else? Feminists blame this on men by parroting the worn lament that men are intimidated by intelligent women. If men weren't afraid of intelligent women, they insist, then men would find women interesting as people rather than as sex objects. The problem with this is many of them confuse belligerence with intelligence, a reflection of their limited perception of masculinity. Exaggerating peculiar differences. When we think about others, we often focus on and exaggerate their peculiar differences. Cartoonists express this in terms of physical characteristics. Perot's ears, Bush's forehead, Clinton's jowls. Women and men do this to one another too. When men act out feminine behaviors, for example, they tend to overdo the limp wrist routine. Women who think they are emulating masculine intelligence are often being merely pugnacious and rude, acting like arrogant bullies. Few men are intimidated by powerful, intelligent women. Given the nature of women in the male equivalents of women's trashy romance novels, this should be obvious. Lois Lane, for example, often needed rescuing, but only because she led a life of high adventure. Mrs. Emma Peel from the old Avengers series was a tremendously talented but sensual sleuth who rescued John Steed many times. Contrary to the myth, men fantasize about powerful, intelligent women, idealizing them as jungle queens, randy rocket scientists, or, like the character Vasquez in Aliens 2, the actress who played the role received more fan mail than Sigourney Weaver, fun-loving fighters. Friends, and lovers. Regardless of their sex, however, bullies can intimidate anybody. To make matters worse, men are particularly vulnerable to female bullies because they are not taught to protect themselves against women. As many women confuse bellicosity with assertive intelligence, the result is that when men shy away from their arrogance, they deny their own culpability by pinning the blame on men. Shirking responsibility for the consequences of their own behaviors, such women cut themselves off from the possibility of relationships with men who are both friends and lovers. But aren't men to blame for this? Aren't they interested in only one thing? Nothing could be further from the truth. Most men want for lovers women who are also their friends. Their desire is so prevalent among men that confusing psychotherapy with friendship, feminists assert men already do marry their best friends. But feigned interest is no substitute for genuine communication, nor is the pretense of stupidity a basis for authentic affinity. Consequently, men's hope for finding romantic love and friendship in the same person often fades into a fantasy that turns into infidelity. Ironically, most women believe they share no responsibility for this, and that's sad because you can't solve a problem you refuse to acknowledge. It's like alcoholism. As long as the alcoholic refuses to admit she has a problem, she will remain an alcoholic. If women want to have men in their lives who find them interesting as more than just sex objects, then they need to become sexual with men who find them interesting as more than just sex objects. They need to start making lovers out of friends. When most women become sexual with men who are friends, they will find more of their lovers appreciating them as much for what's between their ears as for what's between their legs. Until then, many men will continue to feel that beyond the bed, most women are boring. Liberated Bullies, 2012, Olympia, Washington. Since writing this, I've had several encounters with women in positions of authority who are bullies. They confuse assertiveness and personal authority with pounding down anybody who disagrees with them. They also respond to disagreement from men with accusations of bullying and abuse. As Herb Goldberg observed in The Hazards of Being Male, great book, quote, males learn very early in life that psychologically they will lose any confrontation with a female because win or lose, they will be labeled bullies, close quote. How do you deal with women like that? The mean girls, queen bees, passive-aggressive perma-victims, narcissistics, psychopaths, sociopaths, and women with borderline personality disorder, all of whom hate being treated like equals. In the company of men, the most effective way to deal with bullies is to stand up to them. But that doesn't work with female bullies because then they accuse you of abuse. How do you deal with that? A rational society would not put up with the false accusations. It would not pretend that women never do any wrong, but would recognize that we are all human and, regardless of our sex, gender, or sexual orientation, everybody is subject to the same faults and foibles. Women are neither better nor worse than men, but we don't live in a rational society. Instead, we live in a culture that places women on pedestals while pretending not to. How do I deal with the female bullies? I disconnect from them. There is no room in my life for them. That's all for now. Check out the other videos, subscribe to the channel. For the Backlash at Backlash.com, my name is Rod Van Mecklin.